Hello and welcome everyone. You've all seen the memes that people are making regarding Starfield. Everyone's saying that Starfield is not good, it's a boring game, and most people don't even know what the purpose of the game is. Well, let me tell you, they're kind of right. The game is boring, and many times I ask myself, why am I doing this? What is the purpose of the game? And despite all of this, I'm still playing the game. For the last couple of weeks, I have been playing the game almost every day. And recently, Starfield has been getting tons of negative reviews and overall mixed reviews on Steam. And the interesting thing about this is that most of these bad reviews are from people who played the game for at least 100 hours. And according to Bethesda, the average player playtime for Starfield is 40 hours, which is kind of a lot even for a single player game. If the game is bad and boring, why am I still playing it? Why are people still playing it? Is the game really that bad? In this video, I want to go over some things I think Starfield got wrong. Before I start, I want to say that this game is what I expected from a Bethesda game. I knew it was mostly going to play similar to Skyrim and Fallout 4. I knew that Creation Engine 2.0 wasn't going to be a huge thing, because that's not how game engines work. I think people overhyped this game. Bethesda, they like to stay safe, and they will do the same thing over and over again. That's who they are. This game did meet my expectations. I knew Starfield was what I expected, and that's what we got. But there are a few things in the game that were underwhelming, very underwhelming. Skyrim and Fallout 4 made some good improvements to their mechanics, and it felt like they made a step forward in the right direction. But Starfield, in some aspects of the game, seems they took 2 steps back. So let's start with the main points. I won't cover every single thing that's wrong with Starfield, just the things that I think are big points that really make the game underwhelming, at least to me. And none of these are in any particular order. Let's start with the main story. The main story is very boring and very repetitive. I mean, at first, it's pretty interesting because you don't know who Constellation is, so you go and meet them, and then they tell you about these artifacts, and that's still interesting. But then you get the artifact, bring it back, then they tell you to get another one. So you go and get the second one, and then they tell you to get another one. And you just keep doing this till the game ends. You keep getting artifacts. So the main story starts off good, but it gets boring very quickly. And some of these artifacts only take like 5 minutes to do. You just fast travel to the planet, go inside a cave, go to the end of the cave, may not even have any enemies, take the artifact, fast travel back. You do the whole thing in 5 minutes, and then you just repeat it over and over. The idea of the main story is not bad, it's just the gameplay is really boring. The game loop is boring. It needs more diversity. It should make you do different things throughout the main story, not going and fetching artifacts over and over until the story ends. The Starfield main story is probably one of the most boring stories Bethesda has ever made, but I guess it just works. Next are the quests, specifically the writing of the quest. It's not very good. This game has really bad writing, where most of the time you don't even know why you're doing the things you're doing. This is where the ongoing joke comes from, where no one knows what Starfield is about. Many of the quests are like the main story, where it starts off good, but then it ends badly. Where it's just boring, it's not interesting anymore, or just has a weird ending, weird conclusion. For example, there's that one quest from Paradiso, where a ship arrives to Paradiso after like a 200-year journey, but during the journey, we invented grav drives and people inhabited Paradiso. So now you have to be the middleman and solve what do we do with the people that just arrived, because they were supposed to inhabit that planet, but it's already inhabited. And at first, that quest is really interesting. It makes you think, like, what would you do if this actually happened in real life? But then you only have like 2 endings for that mission. You can help them leave and go to a different planet, or you can just kill them, which are weird conclusions based on how the quest started. And why don't they give you a third option? To let the people live on the planet. Like, it's a big planet, and Paradiso is only one little city in the whole planet. It just doesn't make sense. And there's a lot of missions like this that just don't make sense. Why don't they give you more options for the conclusion? And then there are some quests where it just doesn't make sense why you're there and why you're doing anything, why you're helping people. For example, in the main storyline, when you first go to Aquila City, you need to go to the Gal Bank, but the Gal Bank is in the middle of a robbery. You talk with the sheriff who's trying to save the hostages and end this whole robbery thing, and he can't. So you talk to him, and he tells you to give it a shot. But that doesn't really make sense. Why would he trust a complete stranger that just arrived here for the first time ever to this city, to this planet? This is our first time in this planet ever that's controlled by a whole different faction, and he's gonna trust us with this situation. It just doesn't make sense. Why are we doing this? Why are they trusting us with this? Or later on in Aquila City, you go to that area with the lower class, and you meet with this stranger you don't even know, you just met him, and he tells you all his problems. Like, first of all, why is he telling you his problems? And then you're like, oh, I can help you with that. Okay, but why am I helping this person? Like, the game doesn't give me a reason to help this person. And even one of the dialogue options is for the person is, why are you helping me? Even the NPC doesn't know why we're helping them. This game just has bad writing. Like, it needs to give us reasons to do the things we do. And it needs to give us more options for the endings and the conclusions of the quest. I've recently did the Ryujin quest line. And at the very beginning, there's a quest where it's like, there's an important meeting between two rival companies. And we need to stop them. We're gonna send you. Like, why are you sending me? You just literally just hired me like less than a day ago. Why am I getting sent to this meeting? Why not send a senior executive or a senior operative? They're sending me who they just hired like a few hours ago. It just doesn't make sense. Right? In other games like Fallout 4, kinda makes sense because everyone is out for each other. But at the same time, there's like the settlements and everyone's trying to help rebuild. So you could go either way. But in Starfield, that doesn't make sense. And people have already made videos on this, how Starfield has really bad writing, just in the whole game, not just quests. And the main part of that is that they don't give us a reason to do things or why we're doing things. And for the next point is weapons. There aren't very many weapons in Starfield compared to the other games, like Skyrim and Fallout 4. Looking at the wiki, I believe there's only like one energy pistol and one energy rifle, as well as one EM weapon and one EM rifle. That's not very many weapons. On the ballistic side, I think we have a decent amount. When it comes to energy and EM weapons, we need more weapons than just two. I remember when they were promoting this game, they were saying that this was going to be the biggest game with the most weapons, the most crafting, which we will talk about later. And just more of everything, more dialogue, more NPCs. And there's only 2 energy weapons and 2 EM weapons. That's very underwhelming. What happened to all the weapons? I mean, look at Fallout 76. Yeah, it is a live service game, but even at launch, that game had tons of weapons. Ballistic and energy weapons, and heavy weapons, and melee weapons. We need more energy weapons, we need more EM weapons, and a lot of the weapons feel the same. We need more variety. I remember my first character build was an energy build, and I couldn't find weapons. Well, now I know why. There's only 2 for energy. But don't worry, they're coming with Creation Club. Since we're already talking about weapons, we might as well talk about the crafting system. The crafting system has been simplified, but that doesn't mean it's better. You know, they said that the crafting system was going to be the most robust of any Bethesda game, and after playing Fallout 76, I was kind of hyped for that. But after playing the game, it's also very underwhelming. First of all, each weapon or spacesuit only has like 3 or 4 mod slots, and there's only like 2 or 3 mods per each one. It seems like it's pretty much the same as Fallout 4, maybe even less than Fallout 4. Like, yeah, crafting system is simple than before. It makes more sense. They combine the armor pieces into one, so now you just have spacesuits. You don't have like different pieces of armor like in Fallout or even Skyrim. It's just one spacesuit and that's it. But there really isn't enough mods to really make a unique build. I made a character build based on crafting, and I don't think it's worth to ever craft anything. Just use the base gun or the base spacesuit and you're good to go. But even if you wanted to craft something, you can't, because all of the crafting specs and everything related to crafting and most mechanics and content in the game is locked behind the perk. The crafting perks just add more steps to crafting, because now you have to get a perk, do research to get the recipe, and then you can do the crafting. But to do the crafting, you need to find the resources and you need the perk, which I don't know why it's asking for the perk again if you already have it. It's just adding more steps to the crafting system that are not really necessary. And another weird thing about crafting is that there's a color slot or skin slot where you can change the color of your gun or spacesuit or whatever, but there isn't a single color in the game. So why is that slot even there? My guess is it's also coming through Creation Club. You can buy skins, you can add it to your guns and spacesuits, but why is that not in the main game already? Yeah, overall the crafting system was very underwhelming. Yeah, the menu is way more simpler to understand. There isn't enough mods. You're better off just using the base gun or the base spacesuit. Crafting is something I do now at the very end. After I got all the perks I want, then I'll start crafting. it's no longer a requirement like Fallout 4, where you needed to craft to have the best guns, the best armor, or you would struggle in that game. And since I already mentioned the perk system, let's go ahead and talk about the perk system. Where do I even start? The perk system is terrible. And for those of you who don't know about the perk system, basically you have different levels, or what the game calls tiers. And to go to the next tier, you need to buy a bunch of perks from the previous tiers. And then every time you buy a perk, you need to do a challenge to buy another of the same perk. So you can get the security perk to let you lockpick novice locks. But to get the second level of that perk for advanced locks, you need to complete a challenge. And at first, I thought these challenges would be cool. You get a perk, do a challenge, you get the same perk again. But no, some of those challenges are not fun and they're just tedious. Like the security perk. Like the first challenge has you lockpick 5 different locks. Well, that can be tedious if you're not finding any locks. And it could take forever to get the second level of that perk. Or to get the piloting perk, I think for level 3 or level 4, I think it's level 3, you need to fight, or you need to destroy 50 ships. Well, ships don't spawn very frequently. They're kind of hard to find. You have to go from planet to planet until someone spawns randomly. And that could take a long time. So it's very tedious. Yeah, you can use the computer and you can do the Crimson Fleet challenges or missions, but they don't spawn that frequently. And 50 ships is kind of a lot. You're gonna spend a lot of time finding ships to destroy. So I don't know, maybe they should remove the challenges or lower some of the more tedious ones. And then there are some that are super easy, like the boost pack, where you need to use your boost 10 times in combat. You just enter combat and jump 10 times. That's easy. You can do it in like 5 seconds. And just the whole perk system overall, it just doesn't feel very balanced. It seems like all the cool perks that you would need or want are at the bottom, and everything else you don't want or don't need is at the very top. The problem with that is that it takes forever to get to the bottom, and you can't work on different perk trees. You have to pretty much focus on just one because it takes so long to get to the bottom. And don't forget, you have to do the challenge as well. So I think the perks need to be a little more balanced. Some need to be moved up, some need to be moved down. Some of the challenges need to be toned down. And some of them are really useful, but don't really give you benefits you need. Like the reactor perk, where it increases your reactor, but it increases it by 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 5. Like, I don't think using a perk to increase your reactor by 1 is good, especially if the perk is at the very bottom of the perk tree. To me, that seems like a waste. Increasing your reactor is good, but using one whole perk just for one more reactor level, it needs to be way more than that. So I think there needs to be some rebalancing of the perks. And like I said before, a lot of the content is locked behind the perk. All of the crafting, a lot of the shipbuilding modules, everything is locked behind the perk. A lot of the mods you can use for crafting weapons or spacesuits, you only have 2 or 3 mods. And for each of those mods, you need a different level of the crafting perk. The reason that's a problem is that it takes forever to get perks in this game. And you need to do the challenges, which may take a long time to do. So you can't just stack them up like in previous games, like in Skyrim or Fallout 4, where you can just get the same perk multiple times. Fallout had a level requirement, but in that game you level up so fast that it didn't really matter. And I guess that brings us to the next point. Gaining XP in this game is really slow. So with the last character that I made, I spent about 48 hours with that character and I'm only at level 30, which is kind of low if I compare to Skyrim and Fallout 4. After 48 hours in Fallout 4, I pretty much have my character already built out. I would already have all of the required perks that I need to survive in the wasteland. But in this game at level 30, that's kind of low. The best way I found to get XP from playing the game is doing the main story. The problem with that is the story is short, it's boring, and it's very repetitive. And it's just not fun playing through the main story. You can also grind and make an outpost where you can farm resources and use those resources to build things, and that gives you XP. But that's really boring and I don't like grinding because it's boring. I would rather play the game, and I don't like that you pretty much have to grind to gain XP in this game to actually enjoy it. That just doesn't make sense. You should be able to play the game to enjoy it, just like Skyrim and Fallout. In those games, you can grind, but you don't need to. You can just play the main game and you'll level up normally. Another way to gain XP is through exploration, but it's really slow gaining XP through exploration because you don't get a lot of it. Then you have to explore the whole planet to get a decent amount of XP, and that could take a long time, especially if it's a planet with a lot of resources. And that's another point we haven't talked about yet. The game's exploration is really boring because all the planets are empty. There's nothing to do in those planets. So exploration in this game, it's not fun, even though that's what the game is about, exploration. So the best way to gain XP is the main story, but the main story is not very good. And it's just a slow process any other way of gaining XP. Or maybe I'm just doing something wrong. You guys let me know in the comments. What can I do to gain a lot of XP fast without grinding and just playing the game normally and having fun? But with that said, let's move on to exploration. I already mentioned the planets are empty. There's nothing to do there. Yeah, there are some random outposts that you can go to that are generated randomly. The problem with that, they use cookie cutter outposts, so they're all the same. All the enemies are the same. All the enemy spawn points are the same. They have the same patrolling area. Even the loot is in the same exact area of every single outpost. So it gets really boring, very repetitive, very fast. But going to each planet is really boring. It's just rocks and sand. The problem with exploration in this game is the game doesn't really give you an incentive to explore. You do get XP from exploring, like I already mentioned. You don't get a lot of XP from it unless you explore the whole planet and the whole system. But that's going to take you a couple hours to do. So they need to make exploration a little more interesting. Maybe add more locations. That's fine if they use cookie cutters, just have more of them. Have more variety of them. It seems in this game, if you're not doing a main quest, there isn't much else to do. You need to be doing a main quest or a side quest, otherwise you're not going to be doing anything. And that's what's making the game very boring. When you're exploring, all you see is rocks and sand. That's it. There's also no sounds. The only thing you can hear is the background music that's playing all the time. And some people have been hating the music. I think the music is really good, but it does get repetitive. It's the same music over and over. And all the songs sound very similar, so it feels repetitive. We definitely need more music in the game that sounds different, because right now it's getting very repetitive, especially if you're out exploring. Maybe they should have added a radio like in Fallout. Now let's go back to the main story and talk about the ending. So if you haven't played through the main story, you might want to skip this section. I'll have timestamps in the description. You can just go ahead and skip this. But let's talk about the Unity, also known as New Game Plus. First of all, I think the Unity is a feature of the game, in the sense they added the Unity to the lore of the game. So to me, it's not like New Game Plus. To me, it's like this is part of the game. This is the game. I think Bethesda wanted you to go through the Unity and restart all over, because it's part of the main story. It's not like other games like, let's say, Ghost of Tsushima, where you finish the story is over, you go back to the main menu, you select New Game Plus, and you start the game all over again. It's not like that. The Unity is the game. You're supposed to go through it and restart all over, because now you're in a whole different universe. And this actually makes sense if you think about the perk system. I already talked about how it takes a long time to get to the bottom perks, and how it takes a long time to branch out. You have to focus on one perk. So it makes sense if you're supposed to restart the game over and over, that's how you're supposed to get the other perks, and how you're supposed to branch out to the other perks. Because I don't see any other way of getting all the perks you want in one playthrough. Because getting XP in this game is really slow. So I think you were meant to go through the Unity. That's what Bethesda wanted you to do. And just replay the main story over and over and over. That is the main story. So you're going through this loop of different universes, which is fine. But here's the problem. It's pointless, because you lose everything. And you can't even take your companions with you, even though they technically enter the Unity with you. They don't come with you. Everything gets reset. You lose everything, except the things that are on you and your ship. So if you spent hundreds of hours creating an outpost throughout the universe, it's all lost. You have to do it all over again. So what's even the point of creating an outpost if you lose everything? What's the point of creating relationships between your companions if that's going to get reset? I don't see a good enough reason to enter the Unity. I would say don't even enter the Unity, especially if you have spent hours and hours creating your outpost. A good way to fix the outpost issue is to add blueprints, like they did with Fallout 76, where you can save your blueprint, and then you can just build it again exactly how it was. But there's no blueprints in this game, as far as I know, so it doesn't make sense to me. Why would you go to the Unity? It's better just to stay in the same universe and get 100% in the game. That alone is going to take you like 500 hours, maybe more. So that's my 2 cents on the Unity and New Game Plus. You can't take your companions through the Unity, but that's another thing I want to talk about, companions and allies in this game. So there are 3 types of allies in this game. There are the main allies or companions that you can build a relationship with. Then there are named allies and unnamed allies. Unnamed allies are the allies that you can hire so they can become part of your crew on your ship. They give you bonuses for them being on your ship. And that's completely fine. Then there's named allies, which are the same as unnamed allies. They just have a name. And maybe they have some lore behind them and some story behind them. And that's okay too. The problem comes with the main allies, who you can build relationships with. This game only has 5 of them. And one of them, you can't even build a relationship. They don't have a separate quest line, as far as I know. There's only 5 of them. That's a huge downgrade to Fallout 4. Fallout 4 had 13 companions, then they added 4 more with DLC. That's way more than Starfield. Starfield only has 5. Huge downgrade. Why are there only 5 companions? And to be honest, they're not interesting at all. They have like one unique thing about them and that's it. And Starfield uses the same affinity system as Fallout 4, where the different actions you take, your companion will either like you or dislike you for doing them. It seems that in Starfield, your companions will like you or dislike you for the exact same actions, and that makes it very uninteresting. Also, the interactions and relationships with these companions don't feel very natural. The writing is really bad. Everything feels forced. It's very disappointing there's 5 main allies. You know, after playing Fallout 4, they had 17. That's a huge downgrade. Another thing I also mentioned was Outposts. And first of all, my problem with Outposts is I don't know what the purpose of Outposts are. In Fallout 4, we can do settlement building. That made sense gameplay-wise and lore-wise. We were rebuilding the wasteland. We were making homes for the Minuteman and the people and the settlers. And you can use your settlement for building, crafting, and all kinds of things. Outposts don't really have that. The only thing Outposts are good for is for grinding resources. But like I mentioned before, I don't like grinding. So besides that, what's the purpose of having an outpost? It's not like settlements where random people will come and live there. No, you have to hire people to go to your outpost. And they're not cheap. They're like between 18,000 and 50,000 per person. And there isn't much to build there. I will say the outpost builder is better than the settlement builder. There just isn't very many options. I don't see the purpose of building them. If you go through the Unity, you will lose everything. And I mentioned this in my first impressions of Starfield, that I couldn't get the cargo link to work. I still can't get the cargo link to work. And I already spent hours trying to figure out the outpost system. And I don't know how the cargo link works still. Is there any other reason for outpost besides grinding money and XP? Let me know in the comments because I really want to know what the outposts are for. Another benefit of the outpost is you can use it to scan at longer ranges, but you can also get a perk to do that. I think it's easier just to get the perk than to build an outpost with a bunch of resources. Now I want to talk about the last section, and that is ships. Ships have a lot of problems. Let's start with the ship crew. So in Starfield, you can assign different crew members to your ship and they will live there, which is pretty cool. The problem with this, the number of crew members you can have in your ship is really small. You can get a huge ship with tons of space for them to live, and you can only have 5 crew members there. It doesn't make sense why you would have this huge ship, you can only put 5 people there. It just doesn't make sense to have a big ship and a small crew. And it's true, there is a perk to increase your crew. There's a perk for everything. If you want to do anything in this game, you need to get a perk, apparently. But I've seen videos of people talking about this perk, and it doesn't make much of a difference to get this perk. I don't know if the perk is broken or what's going on, but that perk doesn't really increase that much the limit of the crew members you can have on your ship. I would need to test out the perk and see if it actually works or not. It's another perk I haven't tried because it's at the very bottom of the perk tree. Bethesda made it seem like the ships were a big thing for the game, so I was kind of picturing a big crew in every ship, right? The bigger the ship, the bigger the crew. But that's not the case. It would have been nice if the game added random NPCs to your ship to fill in those empty slots you haven't filled up yet. So you would have your main allies on your ship, you would have named and unnamed crew members on your ship, and then you would have random NPCs that the game would auto-generate. I think that would be a cool feature. That way your ship looks more like a real ship with an actual crew, especially for those big Class C ships. And it could be a performance reason why that's not part of the game, but maybe it's not, because if you remember, in Settlement, you could have like 50 people. I don't remember the limit, but it was really high. You could have like 50 people in one settlement. It doesn't make sense why there's a very small limit of crew members. If it's a small ship, that makes sense, but if it's a big ship, it doesn't make sense at all. The other problem with the ship crew is just how the whole system works. It's very confusing how the system works. The whole crew system just doesn't make sense how they applied it to the game. Basically, there are three factors or three group factors, I don't even know what to call them, that affect how many crew members can be on your ship. The first one is the skill or the perk itself. So the perk adds more crew members, and I think it's supposed to act as a base. For example, the first level gives you 4 extra crew members. And I think the minimum amount of crew members you can have is 1. So if you add 4, that's going to be 5. So that could be the base. Like I said before, from what I heard, that's not how the perk works. So that's the first thing that affects the crew members. But then the ship itself combines the different pieces you can add to the ship. And those pieces will add up to the number of crew members you can have on your ship. So what the game does, it takes your cockpit and your habitat modules and it adds them up. And then it takes your reactor, weapon, engine, and shield modules and adds up the crew capacity for those modules. Then the game says, okay, which of those 2 groups of ship pieces or ship modules has the least amount? And that's how many crew members you can have on your ship. So for example, if you have a cockpit and a bunch of habitats and the crew capacity adds up to, let's say, 5, and then your reactor, your weapon, your shield, and your engines all add up to, let's say, 10, you can only have 6 crew members because the cockpit habitat group has the least number of crew members you can have, and that's 5. You can have 5 crew members, which is just a weird system. Why not have 15 or take the bigger number, 10? And this is not something the game tells you. This is something you have to figure out on your own. All the game says, it adds to the crew capacity, but it doesn't. It combines the modules into 2 groups, and then it takes the lowest number of the 2 groups. Since we're already here, let's talk about the ship builder. The builder itself has tons of issues. The biggest would be the user interface is terrible. I already mentioned the crew members and how the game doesn't tell you how that system works. But that kind of also applies to everything else. It's just difficult to figure out things, to figure out which weapons are the best, what each piece does. Yeah, each piece has a description, but it's not always clear what it does or what it includes. This is something that I also mentioned in my other video of first impressions. It would have been nice if the game told you or showed you what's inside of each piece. But yeah, the builder has tons of problems. For example, some pieces don't fit together even though you can clearly see they should fit together, but the game doesn't tell you why they don't fit together. Some pieces can't be flipped in the correct way. They can only flip on one of the axes. And the weird thing about this is they will only flip on one axis, but when you buy it, you can now flip it on the other axis, but you can't flip it on the previous axis. Why can't you do that? That just doesn't make sense. For example, you can flip it on the x-axis, but once you buy it, you can no longer flip it on the x-axis, but you can flip it on the y-axis now. It doesn't make sense. I don't know if this is a glitch or intentional, I don't know. Just the overall compatibility of each piece is not very clear. The game doesn't make it clear. It seems the builder has a lot of rules and the game doesn't tell you until you break that rule, and then it doesn't show you or tell you how to fix it. For example, if your ship's too long, it will give you a warning telling you the ship's too long. Actually, it doesn't say that. It says the ship has either it's too wide or too long or too tall, but it doesn't tell you which one. It doesn't show you what piece is causing that issue. So there's a lot of trial and error with this ship builder. There's no compare feature in the ship builder, so you pretty much have to purchase it and put it next to the piece you want to replace and then just go back and forth. See if you even want that piece or if it's better or not. I don't know why they don't have the compare feature for ship modules. You have it for your inventory, but not the ship modules. I think some tabs would benefit from a sort feature. For example, weapons, there's different kinds of weapons, but they're all on the same list. They should definitely let you sort those lists. For weapons, you could have like ballistic weapons, energy weapons, EM weapons, missile launchers, etc. I think this user interface, these menus, would also benefit a lot if they broke up the lists into sections. So the list would still be the same. You would have your weapons list, but it would be broken down into sections. You would have maybe your Class A weapons, Class B weapons, and then Class C weapons. And then within those lists, you would have your ballistic weapons, energy weapons, EM weapons, and so on. But no, everything's thrown out in the same list. There's no compare feature, and you can't sort them. So it's really hard to find a piece that will work for your ship, or that's better than a piece you already have installed. And then the controls are just bad. I mean, the controls are inverted. It's now always clear which floor you're working on. You need more visual cues for the ship builder. Even Time Splitters, a 15-year-old game, you could clearly see which floor you were working on in the map builder. This game, it just tells you the number, tells you which floor you're working on, but it's not clear where you're looking at. And those are the problems with building a ship, but there's also problems with piloting your ship. Problem with piloting your ship in space battles, or the biggest problem, is that the controls are terrible. Movement is terrible. Most things are terrible. The difficulty for space battles is also very high. I think they are going to fix that in the next patch, in the next major patch. But yeah, enemy ships move fast. If the enemy locks on you, you're pretty much dead. So they need to tone down the difficulty. They always take out your grav drive first, which means you can't fly away. But it doesn't even matter because that grav drive jumping doesn't even work in the game. Even though that's an option you have. I mean, it's in one of the loading screens that says if a battle is too hard, you can always grav jump away. But it doesn't work most of the time. Like the game will tell you can't leave because you're in combat. So I don't know why they put it in the loading screen. And they always take out your grav drive first. There's like no opportunities to do space stealth, even though there's like a whole tutorial mission on it. How you can lower your systems and just stealth your way through the enemy. You can't do that. They'll shoot you down every single time. And I know what you guys are thinking. You guys are thinking it's just a skill issue. Yes, I know you can get perks to make all that better. You can get a perk to make the movement better. You can get a perk to make your ship faster. You can get a perk so your enemies have a harder time to lock on you. But to me, that's not fun. That's not fun that I'm required to get a perk just to make the battle fair. Like, not even easier, it's just making it fair. Because the difficulty is so high. Even if you get those perks, yeah, the battles become easier and better, but they're still not fun. And you'll still struggle with them at times. Especially if you're fighting like 5 or 6 different ships at the same time, you're gonna die. I think a game that got it right was Lego Star Wars. Lego Star Wars had good space battles. The movement felt very good. There was random space battles going on and you can choose which side you wanted. You kind of can do that here in Starfield, but if you shoot the NPCs that are helping you, they'll all shoot you. So now you have 2 enemies you have to deal with, or 2 factions you have to deal with. In Lego Star Wars, as soon as you choose your side, the other faction won't attack you. They'll just thank you and then move on. But in Lego Star Wars, the ship battles are way better. The controls feel good, you can move around much easier. They're more fun, to be honest. It doesn't feel like you're driving a tank. I think the space battles could be improved in Starfield. They need better controls. They need to tone down the difficulty. You can get perks to make the fights a little more fair. But if you get a bunch of ship perks, you have to sacrifice some of your other perks, like your gun perks. So now you can't do damage on land because all your perks are on your ship. I already talked about the perk system, but you can't really branch out. You have to focus on one perk tree, or you will not get the best perks at the bottom of the tree. Also regarding space, some people will say that the Starfield map is too big, there's too many planets. I think the map is fine. The problem with the map is that the game has a lot of content, but it's all spread out through the different planets. So it feels like there isn't much content. It feels like there's less content than Fallout 4. But there's probably more content. It's just all spread out. It's not all concentrated in one location. Now to answer my initial question, if the game is bad and boring, why am I still playing it? Starfield got many things wrong. The game did meet my expectations overall, but in some areas it was very disappointing and underwhelming. I believe this game is fun, but it has a lot of downtime. And the downtime in this game is boring, tedious, and pointless. So look at Skyrim's downtime. In Skyrim's downtime, you can't just stop and look at scenic views. Skyrim excels at that. Or maybe you'll come across a random cave you've never entered before. You'll fight some enemies, get some loot, and that makes it interesting. Or in Fallout 4, you can have downtime, just go walking around, do nothing. Then you'll come across maybe a burnt house. You go inside the burnt house, you find a note about what happened to that burnt house. Starfield doesn't really have that. Or you can loot the burnt house and use the junk you just looted to build your settlement. Starfield doesn't have that, right? So even the downtime in Skyrim and Fallout 4, it's still interesting. There's still things to do and see. But in Starfield, what does your downtime look like? It looks like you walking around an empty planet, doing nothing for no reason. You don't really get XP. You don't meet NPCs. Random encounters are really rare on planets. I think I've seen like 2 in my last 150 hours. There's nothing to loot. I mean, you can loot rocks, but it's faster and easier just to go and buy the rock or even make an outpost and grind for resources. There's no reason to be out exploring. So in Starfield, during your downtime, you're literally doing nothing. So it gets boring, it gets tedious, and it gets pointless. If you're not doing a main quest or a side quest, you have downtime and you're doing nothing in Starfield. Yeah, you can travel to different planets, but all those planets are empty. Base is empty. You might trigger a random ship spawn, but that's really slow and it gets boring really quickly. I think that's the biggest problem with Starfield, is there's too much downtime and there's nothing to do during that downtime. That's what I think. But I want to know, what do you think about Starfield? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next video.